Hey guys, so something up front. First, the lighting here is so much better. I should have definitely waited till the outside lighting wasn't interfering with it. But you're not looking at me in the upcoming video. You're looking at Miss Green, Representative Green. So just something I want to do a quick correction of. At some point in the video, I'm citing a number of opiate deaths, actually drug-related deaths, and I think the number is I say that there's 500,000 overdose deaths related to specifically opiates. And in the video, I say 500. I clearly meant 500,000, but I say 500 in the video. I'm saying this stuff off the top of my head. So, just kind of speaking from the top of my head, I don't have a script. So sometimes I'll I actually do that a lot. I'll be thinking, for example, when I say 1,500, or I'll be thinking 1,500, I'll say 15,000, and I'll be thinking like 500, 500,000, I'll say 500. So it's like I'll see one thing in my head and something else will come out of my mouth. So just wanted to do a quick correction there. So yeah, when it comes up, that's 500,000 deaths tied to, if I can remember correctly, over specifically the overdose of opioids. The context will come up in the video. Thank you. Hey guys, so the lighting here is kind of bad. I could wait till night to do this. I got the bright background, so it's throwing everything off, but why not, right? We're here to watch Marjorie Taylor Greene, not me. This is her speaking at the first night of the RNC, and I figured I'd do some commentary on it. So I have a little bit of a connection to Marjorie Taylor Greene. I've mentioned this in my other videos. One, the district she represents in Northwest Georgia is where I was born and raised, and I've lived there off and on since then. I haven't actually lived there for any substantial period of time. Oh man, in about, I guess, 16 years. But yeah, born and raised there. I moved away when I was 20, and like I said, I've gone back a little bit, but yeah. So that's Northwest Georgia. That includes the two largest cities, Dalton and Rome. Second connection I have with Marjorie Taylor Greene is where she was born, Milledgeville, Georgia. That is where half my family's actually is from. And I've lived there off and on over the years. I don't live there now. I actually don't even live in Georgia now. But during the pandemic, through much of the pandemic, or most of it, I actually lived in Milledgeville. So like I said, some connection with this lady. So let's hear what she has to say. She's very pleased with herself. She's enjoying herself. That's good.
Thank you. Today is a celebration. The American spirit is alive and well. And we have once again nominated for president the founding father of the America First movement, Donald John Trump.
Okay, so the expression America First, that was first used, I think, around, at least in political context, in the 1850s by the native candidates that were found in both the Republican and Democratic parties. This was a reaction to certain undesirable immigrants coming into the country, namely the Irish. Then it was used, it was used again by Woodrow Wilson in his 1916 campaign. He ran as a non-interventionist president, meaning he was going to keep not intervention, but he was going to keep the U.S. out of World War I. And if you know history, we ended up entering World War I in 1918. A lot of people say that Wilson always wanted to go into the war and basically ran on that platform to deceive people. Really, who cares what his intentions were? Woodrow Wilson was a racist piece of shit. And then it was used largely starting in the 1920s by the Ku Klux Klan as a reaction to immigrants coming into the country up to that point in rather large numbers. Eastern Europeans and Catholics. Klan didn't like them, and also the fact that they didn't see blacks as real Americans. So throughout his history, the term America First is, I guess is how, as nice as it seems, it's been used as a slogan for liars, bigots, racists, and xenophobes, and the legacy is continuing.
Unfortunately, this is also a somber moment for our nation. 2 days ago, evil came for the man we admire and love so much. I thank God that his hand was on President Trump. And I pray for the family of Corey Comprator, who was killed at the rally, and for other attendees who were wounded. Corey embodied the spirit of America First. He displayed.
I always think that's strange when they say that a person was protected or watched over by God in the same event where other people were killed or died, because to me it kind of implies that maybe God plays favorites. I'm not a religious person. I'm not a believer, but that always kind of comes off as a bit strange to me. I'm sure for people who are believers, they can kind of, I guess, square that circle in a manner of speaking, but I never could.
Displayed the ultimate show of love when he shielded his wife and daughter, sacrificing his own life. He reminded America of what we must be, a people who will do whatever it takes to defend the people and the nation that we love.
I don't know if that's the wife who that lady is. It may be just a random woman out in the audience. I guess she's not. She may be a little too old to be his wife. I don't know. Why do they point to this woman? I don't know. But I stopped at not to comment on that lady. She could be a very lovely person. No, whenever they do that, when they use dead people for their agenda, it's kind of like in a way, it's like Weekend at Birmingham. It's like, we're going to get your body, prop it up, and use it for our own means, and whether you agree with it or not. I mean, he was at Donald Trump's rally, so I guess he would all be for it. But I always think that's strange. Let me tell you something. If I'm at a political rally, even if it's a group that I represent, that I was planning on voting for, don't use me. I don't care who it is. Don't use me for your agenda. Please don't. Well, unless it's like something about, like, I don't know, like giving health care to like injured or disabled vets, something like that, or maybe like some type of environmental protection, like, he died trying to, protect the redwoods or something. And then in that case, or maybe it's like giving money to animal shelters. He really loved, bullies, pit bulls. So, and unless it's something like protecting trees, protecting injured vets, or protecting, dogs and cats and shelters, don't use me. It's one of those things. Prop me up all you want. You can put a stick up my ass and like parade me around like a puppet. I don't care.
Thank you. I love you too. We will honor Corey's memory by building the country he wanted. The country he wanted for his children, and a government worthy of the American people. For far too long, the establishment in Washington has sold us out.
She's wealthy, and she was wealthy before she became a representative. She is the Washington establishment. It's always strange the way they do that. They talk about the establishment and the elites, and they are the establishment and they are the elites, but they also say, the mainstream media, like Fox will say mainstream media, even though Fox is the most mainstream media. I wish I hadn't paused it like that, because from that angle, she actually, doesn't look too bad. Let me unpause it.
They promised unity and delivered division. They promised peace and brought war. They promised normalcy and gave us Transgender Visibility Day on Easter Sunday.
So she talks about unity and peace and division, and then immediately finds a group that they want to target and turn people against, which will lead to division, which will lead towards acts of violence or threats toward these people who are American citizens. Guys, let me tell you something. Trans people make up well below 1% of the country's population, but even if they didn't, let people be who they are. Just let people, look, if people want to identify as whatever, then let them. They're not hurting you. They're not bothering you. I mean, I'm sure some of them, I'm sure out there somewhere someone's being bothered by a trans man or a trans woman, but it has nothing to do with them being trans. It's because that person just happens to be an asshole and happens to be trans. But let people be. They're not affecting you. They're not hurting you. Matter of fact, most of the trans people you meet, kind of nice, kind of lovely people. Honestly, I think a lot of people, especially men, have issues with trans women because it makes them feel kind of funny in their pee-pee. I think a lot of men, they see a trans woman and they're like, oh, I hate you. And low key, they're just like, why am I feeling kind of funny down there? That's my theory.
And let me state
this has very
clearly.
Berlin 1930-something
There are only
vibes.
two genders.
What does this have to do? What does any of this have to do with politics? It shouldn't have any. That's a rhetorical statement. If your whole party is built on the idea of groups that you should hate, this has everything to do with politics. They're a minority party. Most of their policies the Americans don't agree with. So what they do is like, well, you can't agree with our tax policy if you examined it. You can't agree with our foreign policy if you examined it. You can't agree with our plans on health care if you examine it. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell you which group you should hate. And if you don't hate that group, we're going to tell you why you should hate them, even if we have to lie.
We are made in God's image. Amen.
We'll sit there and we'll sit there and say, basically, you're not going to flat out say, we hate trans people and so should you. But that's really what it comes from. And then you're going to, hide behind God. I'm not a religious person, but, I'm sure God loves that.
And we won't shy away
That was
from
Bizarro
speaking
Gretchen
that
Whitmer
simple
out in the
truth
audience.
ever. The Democrats ripped open our borders and allowed millions of illegal aliens to pour in, driving up the cost of housing and health care while slashing American wages and eliminating jobs.
That's actually absolutely true. So for years, I was a member of the Green Party, and some years ago, I actually joined the Democratic Party, and the day after, I received a letter and a plane ticket, and it was to New Mexico, and we actually went down there. The fences that were there, we ripped them open. We ripped the fences open. We actually put like planks for bridges across the Rio Grande, and we helped the migrants, illegals come over the river, and we gave them water, soft cookies, and in some cases massages. Yeah, we actually gave them shoulder massages, and we said, God bless and go forth. And they didn't understand that because, I was like, wait a minute, they don't understand English. And I was like, they shouldn't have to learn English anyway. So I was like, vaya con Dios, We actually did that. No, but serious. So there is a problem with healthcare. There's a problem with housing. The funny thing with that, though, is that the problems with healthcare, we pay more in drug costs than any other country or any other industrialized country. Because things like not having a national healthcare system and not having bargaining over prices. We pay more for healthcare than any other industrialized country, even though we get some of the worst results, and that's because, we don't have a national healthcare. We don't have a healthcare system. We have a bunch of separate groups where, for example, the administrative costs in healthcare make up, I think, maybe 25% of the cost. Wow, I pause it. She is just staring down at me. That is creeping me the shit out. Sorry, guys. Let me let this play a little bit. That was
They claim that
okay. There we go. That was creeping me out. But we pay more because of this administrative cost, which we could avoid if we had an actual national system. But we don't because we have a for-profit system, and they're making profits. So of course we're going to pay more. As far as housing goes, I don't know exactly how they're driving up the price of housing, but I will say this, that I think the estimate is between 12, maybe 14 million undocumented workers. If you were to eliminate those 12 to 14 million undocumented workers in their country, you can't get rid of that many people without it having devastating effects on different parts of the economy. And two of those parts which it would greatly affect would be agriculture and construction. So a lot of your fruit, a lot of your vegetables that have to be pulled from the ground by hand, those are illegal immigrants doing it. Because guess what? That's not a black job, as Trump would say, because we don't want to do that shit. We did it for a couple hundred years and we're done with it. So your cost of your food is going to go up because you're going to have to start paying people actual working wages to do that. No more exploitation. And as far as construction goes, guys, well, we saw that in Florida. It happened, I think it was like 2 years ago when they actually started passing laws in Florida. It became more restrictive to undocumented workers, and a lot of construction projects just stopped. So there are problems with that, with housing. But guess what? If you got rid of those undocumented workers, guess what? You make it worse. So if you actually want to do something about these issues, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to say something to to industries and business owners that are actually give large campaigns to the Republican Party. Basically, guys, the actual solution to it, she's acknowledging a real problem, but she's openly lying about the solution. I don't even think it's lying. It's lying is when you actually construct an untruth for a purpose. It really falls under the category of bullshit, where you just say something regardless of the validity of it. So she's just really just complete and utter bullshit.
Economy is thriving, yet hundreds of thousands of American-born workers lost their jobs these past
economy
few years.
is thriving. Unemployment's going down, guys. I know a lot of people don't have jobs, but unemployment in aggregate's going down.
Aliens.
I don't know how the economy can be buying for illegal aliens, especially the buy. I don't know if that's because illegal aliens are in the Fed and they're setting the interest rates. Maybe. I don't know.
Our open borders have also unleashed the worst drug crisis in American history. Yet while hundreds of thousands of Americans are suffering, the Democrats spent over $175 billion.
Okay, so roughly between 1999 and 2020, about 841 Americans died from drug overdoses. I think that's the estimate. The number seems actually a little low to me, but that's what they said. Maybe it's not low, but yeah, 841. And 500 of those overdoses were tied to opiates. These opiates are connected to Purdue Pharmaceuticals. Purdue Pharmaceuticals were owned by the Sackler family. How does that work? Well, what happened is that the Sacklers, when they developed oxycodone, they targeted the health care providers and working class white areas. Yes, white. If you look at their documents and their notes from their meetings, they targeted white people. And one of the reasons they targeted white people, because they basically were trying to get people addicted to these drugs, and they knew that if it was black people addicted to the drugs or people of color, it would not be as effective. It would look bad. So what they did is they went to these doctors and they gave them fake research that basically told them that your patients, if they're in large amounts of pain, their pain will kind of balance the addictive effects of these opioids. And they also said, well, the oxycodone will have a slow release system, making it harder for them to become addicted, very damn well knowing that they can just crush it up and snort it or do whatever with it, and thus making the effects of the drug immediate. This was so. By the way, the Sackler families and Purdue Pharmaceutical, it's an American company. So what happens is it's not in Mexico or Colombia. So what happened is when people get addicted to these pills, and they can no longer get the prescriptions for the pills. They get substitutes like heroin or illegally produced fentanyl. And by the way, the majority of opioids that come into the country, they're brought in by Americans. We know this. Another thing I want to bring up is that during the 80s and 90s, when there was a crack epidemic that disproportionately affected black people, it was the fault of it was a deficit or a fault of the black community, our culture, all of these things. But when you have a crisis that, at least in the beginning, disproportionately affected whites, it's everybody else's fault. Which is also interesting because the opioids were, at least the drugs, the prescription drugs were being produced in the U.S. Yet they're blaming people outside the U.S. And by the way, there was no cocaine being grown in the U.S. Yet that was our fault.
Your tax dollars to secure Ukraine's borders.
They're pro-Russia, guys. They love Putin.
But they tell us the border wall is too expensive.
It is. It's also really stupid.
But an American government that serves the interests not of the wealthy.
Yeah, here's what you do, guys. You build a big-ass wall, and you know what people do? They take boats because guess what? We have a lot of coastline. And if you don't think people can take boats to get into your country, go ask the Europeans. So yeah, it's not that it's too expensive, and it's just dumb as hell. It's just dumb as hell, guys. We're not landlocked.
The globalist or the powerful few. But if
globalists are Jews. This woman believes in Jewish space lasers, guys. The globalists are the Jews.
All hardworking Americans is within our grasp.
She is so pleased with herself. Look at her.
Donald Trump has.
She's almost giddy.
And he will make America successful again.
She's giggling. I don't know if you guys can hear that. She's giggling. I bet you like that's like her kink. If you're just like in, an intimate situation with you, lean over and whisper and say, the globalists are taking over. We should build that wall. She's like, tell me more. She is literally giggling afterwards. She's so pleased with herself. If she weren't a complete monster, like if I didn't know what she was saying, if she were like, it would almost be kind of cute. Her hateful speech is making her so, like, that's legit. Look at her eyes. You can see the wrinkling in her eyes. That's like a legit smile. She's kind of a monster. Wow.
He will make us wealthy again. And as
so
God
pleased.
as my witness, he will finally give us the country we deserve.
I do agree with that.
Because Donald John Trump is the leader America deserves. God bless the American people. God bless President Trump, and God bless the United States.
Okay, so here's the reality of it, guys. Ask your average American how many branches of government there are. They probably can't tell you. Ask your average American how many members are there in Congress. They probably couldn't tell you. Ask your average American how many senators are in each state. The federal senate. They probably can't tell you. Ask your average American how many Supreme Court justices there are. They probably can't tell you. And then ask your average American if they voted in the last presidential or midterm election. Well, the last presidential election actually had record outcomes. I think it was 60%. But in the past, I think it's right around 50%, I believe. And for midterm elections, it's around 40%. So if you ask your average American, did they vote in their last presidential election or midterm election? There's about a 50% chance they didn't. And if you're talking about local elections, we're talking about even smaller numbers. So taking all that into consideration, yeah, I do think that we are getting the president that we deserve.